now?
Yes.
So let's start. Hi again, everyone. I'm Ahmet Selçuk, and today we are going to introduce Node.js. We're going to jump into Node.js, which is a JavaScript framework for backend services, backend development. So yes, as I mentioned, I'm in this market for over than 10 years, and I saw lots of methodologies and FE programming languages. Node.js is the latest one that I learned, and which has some powerful sides, and we're going to discuss it, all of them. Today we are going to start with explaining what is Node.js and why should we use Node.js in our projects, and should we use it or shouldn't we use it. And after that, we are continue with the prerequisites for starting coding development with Node.js. And some of you, maybe you know, the JS is standing for JavaScript, so we need JavaScript skills for coding in Node.js environment. So after that, we gonna do some basic Hello World application with Node.js, starting with basics. And after that, I will be ready for the question and answers. And this is the second of our seminars for Node.js, and the first one was pretty long, so I simplified the presentation. So let's start. What is Node.js? Let's keep this quick. Node.js is a free and open source server environment based on V8 engine. V8 engine is the Google's engine for converting JavaScript into machine code. So Node.js is based on V8 engine, and Node.js can work on various platforms. You can run Node.js applications on Windows, Linux, and macOS operating systems. What is Node.js? Node.js is running our JavaScript code on the server side. You know, we are running our JavaScript code for client-side development up until this point, up until Node.js. And Node.js uses asynchronous input-output based event loops. These are some complex parts. We are not going to discuss further these parts, but it's good to know that Node.js runs asynchronous, and it uses event loops, asynchronous IO-based event loops. And as we said, it is based on V8 engine, Google's V8 engine, with 100,000 lines of JavaScript and C++ code. And NPM, we are using NPM for our packages and package managements. So these information are important, guys, because we are choosing our next development environment and our next language according to popularity and according to market needs. So we are following the Stack Overflow surveys every year, and these are some basic, some important points for the 2019 survey results. Node.js is the most commonly used technology in 2019, and first of most wanted technologies, which is really important. This means in the market, everybody wants to be skilled about Node.js. This is really important, and is the sixth of most loved technologies. Yes, for example, Java can be the first common language in the market, but Node.js users loves their technology more than Java users. This is important. So in Node.js, we have lots of built-in modules and some extra modules, and we got this list from TechMint website. These are the most famous, most popular JavaScript packages. And the first one is Express.js. Express.js is used for creating web applications with Node.js. And Nest.js is also creating web applications, something like Web API, and mostly using for microservice development. Loopback.io is creating for REST APIs. Socket.io is self-explanatory, as you know, is used for real-time applications and opening a channel between client and the server. Meteor.js is for creating cross-platform applications. And Koa.js, again, a web app package. Sales.js is for MVC pattern, implementing MVC pattern into Node.js. And Mean is a state framework. M stands for MongoDB, E stands for Express.js, A stands for Angular, and N stands for Node.js. So these four technologies is used, and they are named like Mean.io, Mean stack. So why should we use Node.js? We can do anything with Node.js. What do we mean saying anything? We can create web servers, we can create websites, we can create file reading and file operating programs with it. We can collect form data, which means we can get information from user and we can run our logic into it. So we can connect both relational and NoSQL database with Node.js. So you can do anything for a program, for a project with Node.js. The most powerful side of Node.js, as we mentioned, is asynchronous programming. So we need to change our thinking if we are coming from the Java or if we are coming from the most classical basis, for example, .NET and Java. So the thinking, the running of code is slightly changing in Node.js. So we need to be aware of the asynchronous programming. So this is the important part, but it's a detailed information actually. Node.js runs single-threaded, non-blocking, asynchronous programming, so that we can use our memory and our resources efficiently with Node.js. So Node.js can run in containers, which is really important if you are going for serverless or cloud systems. So you need to containerize for your application. So Node.js born ready for serverless applications. So this is the powerful part of our Node.js. So we have some small list of prerequisites, and JS, of course, we need to use JavaScript programming language. So if you are not really familiar with JavaScript, you cannot start with Node.js development. So I suggest you to start with JS, and after that we have Node.js environment for its runtime environment for our machines, and an editor. And the most used editor is VS Code in the market, and in this session I'm going to use VS Code as well. So all we need is a JavaScript programming skills, Node.js runtime installed on our machine, and an editor. So we're gonna talk about JavaScript refreshes. As we said, without JavaScript development skills, we cannot go into Node.js, and the asynchronous programming with JavaScript is the crucial part. So we're gonna talk about the callbacks, promises, async and await operators. And interpolation is also a useful part. I want to mention that also. And arrow functions. What is arrow function and why we use arrow functions in JavaScript development. So we're gonna discuss all of this. So let's start with the asynchronous. Why we use asynchronous? So in this example, in print string method, we are giving a set timeout. Set timeout stands for running asynchronous operation in JavaScript. This is pure JavaScript, by the way, so this is not related to only Node.js. So in here, this code runs the input string into the console, but when we write the function print all, printing string A, B, C in an order, the result cannot be in order. So because of the asynchronous operation, so we are giving some random delay for this thread. So in this example, we need to be sure that A, B, C, and will appear in the console in right order. So we have callbacks for this. The first option, the most legacy one, is the callback. Callbacks are not used in the modern Node.js and JavaScript development, but we need to know about callbacks. So this all logic of the modern part is based on these callbacks. So this is important. So this is changed the function's signature a little bit. So you know that you see that the print string gets the string and a callback as a parameter. After writing the string into the console, it's running the callback function with the parentheses, as you can see. So this is the callback usage. You are providing a function as a parameter into another function, and this is your callback. But after that, this callback syntax is a little bit confusing, because if you want to use a callback inside a callback, this would be a nightmare. So they implemented promises. We are using promises to make our code more tidy. So a promise has two parameters, resolve and reject. So the print string method has the same signature, getting the string input, but it's creating a new promise, not writing the console, not writing the string into console directly. It's creating a new promise, and after writing the console, it's running the resolve function. Resolve function is a reserved keyword for promises, so you don't need to pass any callback function into resolve or reject. So you can use resolve. With this, we can chain our consecutive calls into JavaScript, but don't get confused, because we have some neat alternative for these promises too. After these promises, we have async and await operators. Async, as we all know, it stands for the asynchronous method. So the promises has the ability to run our codes in a chain. So async await operators makes our promises more neat and more beautiful way to code. So these two codes, this print string method returns a promise, and we're gonna use that promise to call our next code. But in here, we can write our print method. We can call our print method with the promises. This is important. We need to implement the promise in the print string method again. But we can force the code to run this all three calls in an order by adding await operator before them. So these are the callbacks, promises, and async await operators in JavaScript. So yes, these are the three implementation of same functionality. So as you can see, with more than one callback, it gets really, really dirty. So we don't want to use this methodology. So after the promises, we can use then keywords to run our next functions, next steps for our code. But after the promises, we have async and await operators to make our code more neat. As you can see, from instead of calling then again and again, we are using await operators. These are important for our Node.js development. And the other part is interpolation. You know that we can concat strings with adding plus operators into them, but instead of that one, we can use backticks to write to use these template literals. These are also JavaScript interview questions, guys. So you need to be explain what is interpolation, what is template literals, what are they using for. So in this example, you can see in the console log, instead of writing 15 is plus A plus B, this is confusing. So you can use $sign with the curly parentheses and use your JavaScript code into that parenthesis. This is really useful when you are writing this kind of code. This is a bad approach. And arrow functions. Before arrow functions, by the way, guys, I edit sources each and every slide, so you can check these addresses after this presentation if you want. They have detailed information for these topics. I want to briefly introduce these functions and these slides. So we have arrow functions. So, and I forgot the definition of template literals fields. Sorry about that. So don't consider this part. In classical way, we were using a new property to define our function, and it's returning some value. This part is not important. But with the arrow function, we can define our functions without the function keyword, with opening a parenthesis, equals and greater sign, with curly parentheses. And this is the same definition for JavaScript engine. So this is exactly same for this. And we can add input parameters for our arrow functions. And we are going to see this example into the Hello World application for Node.js. The arrow functions are important. Arrow functions has also some trick about this life cycle, but that one is pretty confusing, and this is not related to Node.js, so I don't want to make you confused about that one. But they have that one is also an interview question, so maybe you can check that one. Arrow functions has something different with this this keyword. So getting started with Node. So we have our computer in front of us. What we need to start with Node.js. First of all, we need to download Node.js environment, Node.js runtime environment into our machines. So in the nodejs.org website, in the download section, according to your operating system, you can select the Node installation, and you can follow the steps for the installer, which is pretty easy. After that one, you can check the installation with writing node -- version, or more easy, node - version, node - v into the terminal, and you can check if it's installed or not. So in this slide, let's check it immediately. I'm opening my terminal. Node is already installed on my machine, so I'm saying node - v. So it says the Node version 14.1.0 is installed on this machine. If you see some version information here, it means that you successfully installed your Node runtime into your machine. So after that, in Node.js, Node.js download, the NPM is also included in that package. So you don't have to explicitly install npm for that one. But if you installed Node.js only, you can install npm package manager from this address too. So we need Node and npm up until this point. After Node.js installment, we are ready to go. So we can open our favorite editor for coding. So we can start with coding. We have some modules part in Node.js. What is modules? Modules are JavaScript libraries, basically. And we have some built-in modules in Node.js. So we are going to discuss HTTP and FS built-in modules in our example, which are pretty easy, and we will see the differences between built-in modules and the third-party modules in Node.js. So as you can see, HTTP and HTTPS, pretty self-explanatory. This is for transferring data over the HTTP protocol, and FS stands for file system. So with FS module, you can use, you can create, you can delete, you can edit your files into the server. So we have also URL module, which is really popular. But in this example, I don't want to make this session too long. So I'm going to explain only HTTP and file system modules. So let's start. As I mentioned, you are opening your favorite editor. You don't have to use Visual Studio or any other editor specifically, but Visual Studio Code has powerful functions to make coding easier. So you are starting with opening a folder. I opened an empty folder into the VS Code. So let's start with basics. Clicking open folder and select an empty folder in your machine, saying open. So it opened this part. So after that, you can either use in-house terminal of VS Code, or you can use the default terminal for your machine. Terminal is a command prompt, command line in Windows operating system. So you can write CMD into start for Windows machines, and you can open the command line. So you can use both of them. I'm going to use this part. So you need to be into the new folder when you create a new Node application. So we are in the intro Node folder. So we are in the right place. We don't have to change directory with this. So we are starting with npm init command. After hitting enter, it will ask some basic information about the project. You don't have to explicitly write this part, so you can skip this part, pressing enter, 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 enter. So it will prompt you, is this okay? So you're gonna press Y and enter. So it is creating package.json, this part. So if you don't want to use npm init command, you can manually create this file and create this basic metadata information about your project. So we created the package.json, this is the first part, and let's create our first Node.js application. So we need an entry point for our application, and as we say, we are going to create JavaScript source code for our development. And in JavaScript, this is the starting point of every application. So let's write hello world. So we wrote our code, but how can we run it? We have some options, but the first one, the basic one, is running node command. I'm again in the terminal, this part, so let me clear this part. And so yeah, I'm in the intro node folder. I have app.js file. So in terminal, I'm typing node space and the name of the file. See, it run the code into that file directly. So basically, this is the Hello World application with Node.js. As you can see, we don't have lots of files, lots of extra libraries here. The Node.js has ability to run our JavaScript code on the server directly. So let's make our first web application with the Node.js. To create a HTTP server, we need some parts with the built-in modules that we mentioned in the presentation. What were they? So the first one is HTTP module. Using an HTTP has this syntax, guys. So saying const, you can name anything, but the best practice for naming a module is giving the exact same name with for the module. So we have require keyword for our modules. For built-in modules, we don't have to explicitly give a exact path. And this is also changing in Node.js, but this is not related to this presentation. So we have defined our HTTP. We said we are going to use HTTP module with this variable. So we need to create a server. HTTP create server, which is pretty easy. It has some inputs, but we are going to define that later. So let's create it. After that, we can easily server.listen. It requests a port from us. So let's give it 3333 and saved it. Don't forget to save your source files when working with the Node.js. As we mentioned in the presentation, Node.js has event loops. So with this example, the console log example, after running this code, Node.js checks for our event listeners, and it doesn't, it cannot find any event listeners and exits directly in here. So we didn't run anything but writing a string into the console. So let's run this one. We're gonna use the same command for running it. As you can see, at this point, I have a listener. So Node application cannot be exit automatically. It waits for a request to process it. Sorry. So let's open our Explorer and type localhost 3333. As you can see, it sent the request and waiting for a response, but we didn't do anything in our server, so it will wait forever. And if you want to terminate your application with the Node.js, you can use the Control-C shortcut for terminating it. And when terminating it, look, your Explorer gives the error, says I cannot connect to this server. So let's add some listeners here. So in servers, in HTTP servers, we have request and response. And remember the arrow functions here. So we can create an arrow function as a listener. And we are saying console log I have a request. And I'm expecting when localhost 3333 port hit, I'm going to see a console log here. So let's try it. And I run the same command again. It's waiting for a new request. So see, I send a request to that port, and the console gets the request and puts this into that. And I can make another request. So this is the syntax for getting a listener, but this is not enough for a web application. So we need to define our listeners explicitly. What we said when we were discussing about the arrow functions, we can define it explicitly. So let's say listener is an arrow function, and I can extract this part into that listener. So you can give your listener into the create server method. This is exactly same as before. So let's try it again. And I'm hitting the localhost port, and I have the request again, killing and hitting same. So you can define our listeners here. In Node.js, we have some custom modules. What is custom modules? Custom modules means a new library. So let's create a new file, custom listener file, and it's again JavaScript. So let's define a new listener here, and it's getting, oops, sorry. It's again an arrow function. Let's say again, I'm a custom listener. So in app.js, this is the entry point for our application for running this command. What we did when we import built-in modules saying require HTTP. This is a little bit different when we use a custom module. And as we say, this is the best practice for giving the same name exactly. And we are saying require. If this is your module, you need to start with /, and it will show you the candidates. So custom listener is imported here, but we forgot something here. We need to export this export listener equals listener. Okay, so that we can use our listener here. Instead of this, let's duplicate this one and comment out. We can use custom listener dot listener. See, let's save and try this one. I'm terminating with the Control-C and running again. It waits for a request. So let's send it. Sorry. I sent the request. See, I'm seeing my custom listener here. So this is the custom modules and imports. This is the important part. What we have here, a listener, but we need to use request information here. So as we mentioned in presentation, we can use parameters for our arrow functions. So let's say I'm going to use request and response for this listener, and comment out this, open this again, saying use this listener. Good. With this approach, you can use request information into your logic. So let's say I'm going to use log the URL. I'm not sure this is the correct syntax, but let's try. I have a request. I'm terminating this one. Let's run it. Let's say I'm going to hit some dummy URL. See, in this part, I have the request. I have the request URL. I can route my request into the correct listeners. For example, if the URL is dummy URL, I can use this listener, or if it's another route, I can use another custom module here, which is important. So this is the basics for creating a new web server with Node.js. And we have another built-in modules named FS file system. And the syntax is again same. So let's say when I get a request, I'm going to create a new file into this machine. This is not the real world example, but let's try it. So FS has write file function. It requires a path and data into the file and a callback. Remember the callbacks when in the presentation? Normally, we don't want to use callbacks, but in built-in modules, even Ryan Dole, the creator of Node.js, is complaining about this, but they are using callbacks for this FS in built-in modules. So we need to give a path. I want this file to be created in the same directory, and I need some data. Let's give the request URL data into the file and a callback. I can use defining a function explicitly here as a listener, just like this, custom listeners or anything else. Or I can use, again, arrow functions to handle errors when writing content into a file. So let's say I got an error. Also, this error callback has this error parameter, so you can use to log that error into the console. So let's try this and finish this session, guys. What we did, we created a listener. This listener registers itself into the HTTP server, and when any request comes, it is creating a hello.txt file, and it is writing the URL, the request URL into it. So let's try that one. I'm terminating the existing one. Don't forget to save your file and run it again. And it's waiting for a request. So dummy URL changed. Hit enter. See the new file here. I have the URL data into it. This is the file system built-in modules. So the annoying part with this coding is saving the file and terminating the existing one and running it again. We have a solution for that one. I want to introduce that. Up until this point, we are done with the basics. Right? I don't want to deep dive into Node.js and the other modules because this is enough. At this part, we can write our own logic into the listeners, and we can create a new various applications, various web APIs with Node.js. So this is enough for developing a Node.js application. And I want to explain some best practices when creating a Node application. So this is the part is NodeMon. NodeMon gives the ability for live server. So when you change a file into the code base, it's listening the file changes and it's making this termination and running the code, running the new server again part for yourself. So let's try that one. But for using an extra third-party library, you need to install that. For installing, you have NPM again, install, E stands for install, and we are going to -- save and dev, saying NodeMon. Press enter. It will search for the NPM packages from the internet and will install the NodeMon for you. Save dev is important. I'm using NodeMon just for the development purposes, so I'm not using the -- save only. This is for development package. So if you check the package.json, we have a new dev dependencies saying NodeMon with this version. So I don't know if you noticed that, but after running this npm install command, we have another folder here saying Node Modules. Node Modules comes if you are using an explicit library from the npm ecosystem. So let's try this. We have this code again. So let's say this is the changing part. Instead of Node, I'm writing NodeMon at this part. NodeMon app.js. So it says I'm starting watching these extensions in this code base. So it's running. So let's try it. Dummy URL changed. Sorry. So let's enter. Yeah, we have this functionality running. So let's change this listener into this. I'm changing this and I want to log, console log a new request, and I'm saving. After my save, the NodeMon restarting the application server, so I don't need to terminate it and run it again. So URL is not important at this point. I am a custom listener is working directly. So NodeMon is a useful third-party dependency for our projects. And this is pretty much it, but I want to say something tricky about this one. So we said Node is using JavaScript files. So let's say I have a new file here saying dummy.txt. This is a basic text file, right? So let's say I have a code part here running. As you can see, this is a JavaScript code, but it's in the txt file. So I'm terminating this part because I want to try Node to run this dummy.txt. See, it ran the content of the file and logged this string into the console. So you don't have to name your files with the extension .js, but of course you need to make it. This is the best practice, so you don't want to get messy around your code bases. So this is the last part. So let's go back to our presentation and question and answers part. I'm done with the presentation, guys. If you have any question, don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, you can write from the chat. Also, you can ask verbally as well.
Did I use my time well, Rasim, this time?
It was pretty good, and yeah.
Better than me. Well, I want to ask a question.
Sure.
You have showed us the parenthesis function. Is it an anonymous function, or this parenthesis function with arrow?
Arrow function. Yes,
Yeah,
arrow function.
is it an anonymous function? Since we are not renaming, we are not giving a name.
Correct. Yes.
I understand that as an anonymous function. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. They are anonymous functions, but if you want to assign them into variables, you can use any variable to assign them. So yes, basically they are anonymous functions, but you can assign it into a variable and use it anywhere.
Okay, thank you very much.
No worries.
Okay. Another question?
It was crystal clear, I guess.
I think it was straightforward.
Yeah.
So guys, any questions? Or
Then, thank you for your time, everyone. I'm going to share this presentation with Rasim, and they can share this with all you. And if you want to contact us, contact me. You can find me typing at ASOS OZYURT almost everywhere in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Google, everywhere. So if you have any questions, if you have any advices, and I remember we have some newbies in these technologies, don't hesitate to contact us. We will be happy to help you with your career path. And that's all from my side.
Yeah, thank you very much, Selçuk. And we will continue to do that kind of seminar. And it was very useful for the beginners, especially. Yeah, commercially, we are using Node.js in almost every sector so much. That's why, especially for the backend side, for the microservice application or on the cloud technologies, Node.js is really fitting so well. There are so many support on the forums and so much documentation about cloud integration or NoSQL implementation. That's why, don't afraid to start to Node.js. If you know JavaScript in the first place, it will be much better. Almost all of the syntax same on the Node.js, and better to start with JavaScript and then core Node.js, and then if you learn some one of the framework, such as Express, it will be enough for your career. Yeah, that's all from us, and you can follow all other events of ours on the meetup, on our website, or other social media. Anytime you can contact us for the career coaching, for the training, for the seminars, or if you want to contribute some seminar about something, you can just tell us. We are open for collaboration. Yeah, that's all from us. And if you don't have any other questions, we are finishing.
I want to add something. We will stream this presentation from YouTube as well. So if you are interested to see it again, you can follow us on YouTube, and you can watch it from YouTube as well.
Okay. Thank you, guys. See you on other events. Take care.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Selçuk. Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rasim.
Selçuk.
Bye. Thanks, Albert.